If you're overweight and you know how many calories you should be eating each day to reach your goal weight, but you just can't stick to it, or it just doesn't seem to be working, then there are tools and techniques and reasons. There are specific reasons why you can't stick to a calorie deficit. So I made a previous video explaining how many calories you should be eating, a simple way of working out, and how many grams of protein. So, and you've probably just come from that video, but if you haven't, this is the quick version. To know how many calories you should be eating each day, you take your goal weight in pounds, multiply it by 12, and that's the amount of calories you should be eating. So for an example, if our goal weight is 170 pounds, multiplied by 12 is 2040, that's our daily calories. Simple. If our goal weight is 170 pounds, we eat that many grams of protein per day. So the only two things we need to hit each day to reach our goal is 2040 calories. So we need to count or track calories, count them on a calorie log or use something like MyFitnessPal, and track protein. How many grams of protein am I eating each day? Hit those two numbers. Very simple. So that is very simple, but it's not easy. You're going to do it for a week and then you're going to fall off the wagon and you're going to overeat, and it's going to mitigate any progress you've made. So in this video, we're going to go deep into calories, macros, and metabolism and things like that, so we can understand why it's difficult and how to make it easy for ourselves. So the first thing we're going to talk about are calories. What is a calorie? A calorie is a measurement of how much energy a piece of food produces when it's burnt, right? So the way they calculate this is they use an instrument, either a bomb calorimeter or a constant volume calorimeter, and they take a piece of food. They might say take 100 grams of fish, put it in this machine, essentially just set fire to it and see how much heat comes off, right? So they just burn the food, how much heat comes off. So a calorie is just how much heat is produced when you burn a piece of food, and that tells you how much stored energy is in the food. The reason we calculate how many calories we're eating per day is because our body burns a certain amount of energy each day, and you work this out by figuring out your basal metabolic rate. So your basal metabolic rate is how many calories your body uses at rest, and you can adjust that for how much activity you're using. If you know that number, you know how many calories your body is using each day, and you know how many calories are in the food you're eating. It makes sense that if you match them, you're not going to gain weight or lose weight, so that would be a calorie maintenance. If you're overweight, it's because you've got the amount of calories your body uses per day, and you know the amount of calories that are in the food you're eating, but you're eating more than you need to. So you're giving your body a calorie surplus. So that surplus has to go somewhere, and it stores as body fat. The opposite of that is a calorie deficit. So this is how many calories your body burns per day, and you're eating less amount of calories. So you know how many calories because you can calculate how many calories are in the food you're eating. So it's predictable. If you're overweight, it's not like, oh, how did that happen? It's because you've been eating more calories than your body burns per day. Now this is the classic calories in versus calories out model, right? This is what everybody, all fitness YouTubers, all influencers are operating on, most people. There's a handful that aren't. And that's the first step. This is true. If you eat more food, it's like when you go and fill your car up. When you put the nozzle in the car and fill it up, you would never keep the handle going. You wouldn't keep the trigger like pulled and let petrol just spill out over onto the forecourt. You wouldn't do that. You only fill the car. If you've not got much money, you only put a small amount of fuel in. You don't brim it. You don't fill it all the way up. And it's the same with us. The car will operate, but at a certain point it will stop. So we can operate at a calorie deficit. Like the car can operate with just $10 worth of fuel in it. Now you can fill the car up to its requirement until the fuel tank is full, but there's no mechanism for the car to, it hasn't got an overflow tank, but we do. We have stored body fat, so that's our overflow. So if you keep filling the car up past the point of full, it would just spill out over onto the floor. When we do that, it spills out over onto body fat. So a calorie deficit, calorie maintenance, calorie surplus. So there are a couple of ways of figuring out what your calorie maintenance is. Your basal metabolic rate. How many calories do you require each day to not lose or gain weight? First way is just go online, type into Google BMR calculator, basal metabolic rate calculator. It'll ask you for some details, your height, your weight and your age, and your activity level. Put those in and it will give you a number. That number is a good baseline. You can go off that number, that's fine. Another way of doing it is weigh yourself every day and track calories in a calorie log every day. And at the end of the week, add up the total amount of calories. So each day you'll have a number. You might eat 3,000 calories one day, 2,000 calories another day, 2,500, and you'll have 7 numbers. You'll have 7 calorie totals. Add those up and divide it by 7. That will give you your average calorie intake per day for that week. And then you look at your weight, and if the weight has gone up from the first day to the last day, then you was in a calorie surplus. That's above maintenance. If the weight has stayed the same, so you start on Monday, you track your calories and weigh yourself. By Sunday or the following Monday, you've tracked your calories all week and weighed yourself. If the weight has stayed the same, that calorie value is your maintenance calories. Now, just a tip on weighing yourself. This is how you want to do it. As soon as you wake up, go to the toilet. So you've slept all night, you're essentially empty, you haven't drunk anything, you haven't eaten anything. So when you wake up, go to the toilet and weigh yourself. And then write the number down. And then after that you can drink and eat whatever you want, but you're empty, and if you have to weigh yourself at the same time under the same circumstances. So you don't want to be weighing yourself after a meal and before a meal, because this is all going to change the weight. Just one bottle of water will add a number of pounds to your weight. So that's how you track how much you weigh. And then the third way is the method I mentioned at the beginning of this video. Take your weight, your current weight, multiply it by 12, and that'll give you pretty much what your maintenance is going to be. It's quite accurate, it's not perfect, but so now you know your calorie requirement for the day. So a surplus is for if you want to build muscle. The only reason you'd be in a surplus is if you want to build muscle, and a surplus is just more calories than your maintenance. So if your maintenance is 2,000 calories, if you eat 2,300 calories per day, that's a surplus. That's more than you need. That extra energy is going to go somewhere. And if you're active and hitting the gym, it's going to go in your muscles. If you're sedentary, it's going to go as stored body fat. A calorie deficit is where you eat less than your calories per day. So if your maintenance is 2,000 calories, it will be 1,800 calories per day. Now if you do that, the energy has to come from somewhere. Your body needs the energy, so it's going to take it from stored body fat or muscle tissue. And this is the reason why you eat the correct amount of protein, because if you eat the correct amount of protein, it can use that for muscle synthesis, and then won't take the energy from your won't take your energy from your muscle, and it will just target stored body fat. So that's calories. That's the calories in versus calories out perspective of things, and that does work to some degree. The problem is, we are not a car, and we are not just a combustion. So to work out how many calories are in food, they use a machine. They don't use a human. They don't feed somebody a piece of food and work out how much he burnt or she burnt. They put it in a machine, and we're not a machine. If you put 100 grams of salmon into a machine and set fire to it, that salmon, under those conditions, the amount of oxygen in the box and everything will be exactly the same. So the calorie number will be exactly the same. That's why you can get a piece of salmon from Tesco and it will have the same amount of calories as the local butcher on the packet. In the human body, and it's same with a car, if you put fuel into a car, it's very predictable how much fuel it's going to use. So you can calculate the miles per gallon. every Toyota Yaris is going to have 65 miles per gallon, because it always injects the same amount of fuel. The temperature of the engine runs at the same temperature every day. It's all very predictable. Humans aren't like that. A human that has poor sleep and a lot of stored body fat is going to burn fuel in a completely different way as a well-primed athlete, for example, or somebody on steroids, or somebody who's older. So your age, your weight, even how active your brain is. Chess masters burn a lot more calories than somebody just going for a walk who's meditating. And again, monks that are meditating can lower their metabolism. So the calories in versus calories out model doesn't actually solve the whole thing, but it's enough information to help you lose weight. And the only reason I know this, I subscribed to the calories in versus calories out model for a very long time, until I noticed it in my own experience. So I did what I say. I would track my calories each day and weigh myself every day, right? And I worked out what my basal metabolic rate is, and I ate it exactly. So my BMR was 2,500. I would consume 2,500 calories every day, and I would weigh myself, and the weight would go down, right? So I can eat my maintenance calories, and my weight continued to go down. And then I kept upping the calories, and I would still consistently lose weight, and that doesn't make any sense from the calories in versus calories out model. And it was because of the type of foods I was eating. They just don't get stored as body fat, and that's down to ketosis, and we'll talk about that next. So that's calories. That's basically all you need to know about calories. Is you can get a rough idea of how many you should be eating, whether you should be in a surplus or a deficit or maintenance, and where the pitfalls of the calories in versus calories out model are. So I hope that makes logical sense to you, that if you burn a piece of food in a machine where all of the variables are exactly the same, the amount of energy that produces is going to be replicable in every single instance. In a human body, you might have poor digestion and you can't assimilate any of this energy, so you're just eliminating it. It's just coming out in waste. Then that would cause a malnutrition situation. The other way could be true. If you just store body fat more than... So a sedentary person might just store body fat, whereas the active person burns it and utilises it instantly. If you're working out, that energy that comes from that food is going to go into the muscle. If you're sedentary, it's going to go into the fat. So it does vary how many calories you're actually getting out of your food. And this is why that model falls away a little bit, or there's problems with it. The next thing you need to know is about macronutrients. So macronutrients are what the calories are made from. So everything has a calorie, and then underneath that you have macronutrients. So your calories could be coming from one of these three macronutrients: carbohydrates, protein, or fat. And it's worth noting that protein and carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram. So for every gram of protein you eat, you're going to consume 4 calories. Whereas fat has 9 calories per gram. So if you can essentially eat double the amount of carbs or protein than you can fat for the same amount of calories. So one common dieting technique is to limit the amount of fat in your diet. That's why the low-fat diet is popular, because it makes sense. If that's the most calorie dense and I'm trying to lower calories, then I'll stop eating that. I can eat protein and carbs, but that's a bad idea. The low-fat diet is terrible, and we'll explain why. You got carbs, protein and fat, and you would choose a macronutrient ratio. So I checked what the NHS UK government recommendation is for macronutrient ratio, and they recommend that you get 50% of your calories from carbs, 35% of your calories from fat, and 15% of your calories from protein. Right. And this is why you might be struggling with dieting, because in my experience, just from what I've implemented, that's completely wrong. And you've got to look, if that's the guidelines people are using and the majority, 60% of people are overweight, then it doesn't work. The problem is we trust our governments, and that's the authority, and our doctors are going to tell us to eat this, eat a Mediterranean diet with these macronutrients. So you have, and if you've tried this, or the diet the doctor recommends will kind of fall under this category: 50% carbs, 35% fat, 15% protein. And this is a very common, this is what you've heard. It doesn't work. So this is what actually works. That will maintain weight fine. You'll be able to maintain weight. Macronutrients have certain characteristics, and there are kind of things that happen in the body associated with each one. So with carbs are going to spike insulin, and that's going to increase hunger. So I've found, as just a rule of thumb, I'm as hungry as the amount of carbs in my last meal. So if my last meal was high in carbs, although I'm full up, I'm going to want to eat straight after. That's going to make being in a calorie deficit very difficult. Protein is very satiating, and fat is very satiating. So you eat a meal that's high fat, high protein, you're going to feel full, and it's going to suppress hunger for a very long time, and that makes a calorie deficit very easy. The other thing is, in nature, those two macronutrients wouldn't have been found together. So a mango that's high in carbs doesn't have much protein and fat, and a steak that's high in protein and fat doesn't have any carbs. So it's not a good idea to combine the two, and all of our meals now are a combination of all three macronutrients, and that goes against how nature provided the food. So after tracking calories and tracking your weight, you can also track your macronutrients, and you do that by just looking at the food label and working out for each meal how many calories were in that meal, and then how many grams of carbs, protein and fat was in that meal. And I wouldn't track this all very specifically. You just roughly need to know, well, this is the actionable step. Just know what that food is made of. So to give you some examples, if you're eating an apple, that's going to have a load of carbs in it. Carbs are sugar. If you're eating beef, that's fat and protein. So your job is to just, every time you eat a piece of food, know in your head, does this have carbs, fat or protein, and how much of each? Like, what's the ratio? Is it the majority carbs, the majority fat? And you'll find your hunger, if you're splitting them up, so if you're not combining these macros, you'll find you wake up, you have a bowl of cereal, right? The cereal is high carbs, there's a lot of sugar in that. You have your cereal at 8 a.m. By 10 a.m, you're hungry. That's because there was loads of carbs in that meal. Your last meal, if you have high carbs, you're going to go to bed hungry. Whereas if you have high fat and protein in your last meal, you won't be hungry. So all you need to know is carbs make you hungry and fat and protein suppress hunger. So if 50% of your diet is coming from carbs, you're very hungry most of the time, and that's going to make losing weight and being in a calorie deficit very difficult. And nobody talks about this. Nobody told me this. It took me 10 years to figure out how to lose weight, and the answer was get rid of carbs, right? So getting rid of carbs has a name, and it's called the ketogenic diet, because it puts you in a state of ketosis. So instead of running off carbs and sugar, you're running off ketones, which is come in fat and protein. So my recommendation, or this is what's worked for me, if you actually want to lose weight, just do this. Your macronutrient ratio should be 0% carbs and then any combination of fat and protein. And your food will naturally have its own ratio. So I try and aim for as high fat as I can, because that's going to suppress hunger. Hit your daily calories and then just eat fat and protein. That's the ketogenic diet, and the easiest way I've found to do that is carnivore. If I just eat meat, fat and eggs, all of my problems are solved. Now, you don't have to do carnivore, you can have veg as well, but I wouldn't recommend it. So that's basically all you need to know about calories and macros to lose weight. So just to run through the actionable steps, you need to work out your basal metabolic rate, You need to track your calories each day. And the easiest way to do that, if you eat the same thing every day, or you eat similar foods throughout the week, you'll get to know how many calories are in each food. Track your calories each day, weigh yourself every day, and implement a ketogenic diet, which is removing carbs. So then you need to keep an eye on how many carbs, fat and protein you're eating, and remove carbs from your diet, and you will tap into stored body fat and you'll lose weight. Now, when you recommend weighing yourself every day, people think, oh, but I'll get obsessed and I get emotional about what the scale says and it makes me depressed when it goes up. I've found the best thing I did was weighed myself every day, and in the beginning I did have that. I had that feeling every time it went up. I get emotional and I was like, oh, that's annoying because I thought I did good today. You need to get emotionally unattached to what the number says. When you fill the car up and it gives you the price of how much the fuel's going to cost, that might cause a little bit of stress and you think, oh, that's too much. But the number underneath that tells you how many litres was you put in, it's not like you're emotionally attached, oh, that was worse than yesterday. I had to put 10 litres in yesterday and today I had to put 12 in. It doesn't bother you. It's just you put fuel in, then you go where you got to go. And if you can get unemotional about your weight, you put fuel in and you go where you got to go. It's the same thing. So if you weigh yourself every day, the reason you're getting emotional is because you're weighing yourself at weekly intervals. So it gives you a week to build your hopes up. Oh, when I weigh myself this Monday, I reckon I've lost a load of weight because I've been really good on my diet. You don't want to do that, because when it comes, you're building anticipation. The more you build anticipation, the more you spike in emotion. If you weigh yourself every day, oh, I'm a pound heavier than yesterday, okay, I know what I need to do. And it tells you exactly what you have to do each day. If you're a pound heavier than you were yesterday, you've done something wrong. And then you can recalculate, well, I overate, so I need to undereat today. I'm a pound lighter, so I'll keep doing what I'm doing. It gives you instant feedback. You're not waiting a week. You don't need to wait a week to get feedback on what you need to do for your diet. Weigh yourself every day, get instant feedback. Okay, I messed up yesterday. I need to do this or that. And it's a basic skill. That is a basic skill you should have. And you're not going to know. Nobody tells you to weigh yourself every day. But it's just guesswork otherwise. Oh, you eat a load of food and hope that it's the right amount. And just you're meant to instinctively know. But where we have such highly addictive foods, the instincts have gone out the window because food scientists have designed food in a way to hijack your normal satiety responses. Now, when you operate on a ketogenic diet, all of those satiety responses come back and you know when you're full. You'll instinctively not eat for long periods of time and it will surprise you because you're just hungry. That's all it is. So to get off of sugar and carbs, there's going to be a period where it's very difficult, but you just have to push through. And once you get past that, it will become a lot easier. So I hope that helps. If you've got any questions or I've missed any information, you want more information, just let me know. Leave a comment down below. Hope that helps. Let me know how you get on. Any more diet information you need, just ask. Have a good day, boys. Chop wood, carry water.